audio-visual footages will also be important. So it won't be enough to say that there are cases of intimidation or we saw people being intimidated without presenting the evidence. So I'll briefly end this since my time is out.
Yeah, we'll move on to the next question. Ethel, could you?
Hello, so as most of you know, my name is Ethel Tampadzai. I'm speaking from a young Zimbabwean who was born in Zimbabwe, but left when I was about just before I turned 7. So I've been educated in the UK, I've gone to university here, and I've recently become passionate about Zimbabwe and what's going on there. And part of that reason is because a lot of the people I've grown up around, or people from Zimbabwe, who speak to them about Zimbabwe, a lot of them say, I don't want to go back to Zimbabwe, or what's the reason of going there? And I find that quite surprising more and more, as businesses, as governments, as investors are all turning to Zimbabwe and trying to find out what's going on there. We're one of the richest African countries. We have diamonds, gold, everything. And if Zimbabwe's political situation was right, I'm sure a lot more people from Zimbabwe would be going back to Zimbabwe and making it home. So as a youth, I'm looking at these elections as hoping that it's not another case of unfulfilled promises, but I also understand that the government that stepped down or were asked to leave in December last year, or November, December last year, or has in some way, shape or form continued with Mnangagwa, but I've heard different varying opinions on that. And a lot of the information I know has been filtered based on what I can find online and the people that I speak to and the opinions they hold about who should take power next. So what are some of the unfulfilled promises that we've seen for the youth? We've been told from the 2013 and the 2008 election, we've been told youth unemployment is going to go down. They're going to create new jobs for skilled young people because, as we all know, we're one of the most literate youth populations in Africa. We speak very good English. A lot of Zimbabweans in Zimbabwe would aspire to work in a civil service that functions, but recently there have been issues with that, where the civil service have not been paid, so people have had to find alternative employment. School teachers going on strike, so people in universities not being educated, and then not being able to complete their degrees, or starting or going to different countries because they seem more appealing. There's been a massive brain drain in Zimbabwe because a lot of young people aspire to go and study abroad, and there's different scholarships that have started. As a lot of the students I've met at the University of Westminster have come here from the Chevening Scholarship, and I know many other similar ones have started because young people no longer aspire to study in Zimbabwe because they don't see it as somewhere that's functional. They don't see their degrees as valued. They don't see them as valuable to get them in the first place. So our government has continued to promise us skilled jobs, but a lot of those skilled jobs tend to be reliant on foreign investors or foreign companies coming in to do mining, to do different things around our resources that aren't stable, that aren't secured, because as soon as the government changes different policies, those companies leave. So those young people become unemployed once again. The second point is around healthcare. Continually, we're told as youth that, so we are one of the most fertile youth populations within sub-Saharan Africa. Reproductive health, contraception, and just understanding of how young people behave, work, and understanding of mental health has been continually digressive, I can say, from the young people that I speak to there, and there's a lack of understanding of what it is that youth need from healthcare, from education, from government. What is it that young people are expecting the government to do, for them? I feel like there's a massive lack of understanding there, and therefore young people feel whatever the government do, it's an unfulfilled promise to what it is that they actually need. And I think that's something where I know the young people and the political activists within Zimbabwe have been really instrumental in ensuring change and around the shutdown Zimbabwe, for example. I know they were really instrumental in getting a lot of young people from colleges, from universities out there protesting and making sure that the government are listening. Being out there in numbers is really significant for that. But I think it's more than just the government going out to do surveys and going, what is it that young people want? It's about recognising the work that is already being done in Zimbabwe. A lot of the young people I've met here are involved in different panels. I know somebody who's involved in the Zimbabwean Independent Youth Panel for HIV around healthcare. A lot of these young people are being co-opted in by global agencies that are doing research on Zimbabwe because they understand better than anyone else what's going on the ground. The Zimbabwean government, from what I've heard, don't recognise that, aren't listening to what young people are saying on the ground around education or anything. Whereas the brain drain then is fueled by external agencies asking youth to come out and feed the knowledge that they're trying to create. And the discourses that Mami, you said, you're trying to understand how people understand discourse. A lot of the discourse youth are bringing out is from frustration and anger that the government say they're going to do all these things and understand the needs that young people have, but they continually fail to engage with the youth, firstly. Secondly, recognise them for the work they are doing. And thirdly, fail to provide the services that young people really need, but currently aren't receiving in Zimbabwe, and therefore having to go out for them. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a very efficient use of presentation time. You guys will never late. Well, over to you, Dr. Mendasa.
I'd like to just make 3 points. The first is the enormous irony that we put so much value to elections, when in fact the history of elections has been one big disaster. I find it very difficult that I can understand the excitement about elections. Not only in Zimbabwe, but in the African context. If we seem to forget that the elections are part of the bourgeois democracy model to which we all subscribe by virtue of membership of the UN and implicit universal acceptance of the bourgeois model from Westminster ahead. And that the main purpose of elections is to ensure the bourgeois model, which is one, an accountable executive, and secondly, a vibrant legislature, and thirdly, a fiercely independent judiciary. On the basis of that measure alone, we have a problem. In our situation in Zimbabwe, it's a mess. Let's be very clear. It has been so for a long time. So I must come very clear that I have no reason to expect that these elections will be any different from the last 4 or 5. And I must say that unlike some of like my brother George, I have not been out of the country for more than 10 days since the ceasefire in January 1980. So I've been there, okay? And the doctors, I don't want to speculate. And let people know I was in government the first 10 years of post-independence. So I have no illusions at all that these elections will be a repeat same fast. The only one difference is this, that the coup leaders have inadvertently brought a lot of global attention and scrutiny. And this will be the first time since 2002. In the same vein, in 2002, if you remember, the Commonwealth Observer Mission, Richard, condemned the election. And everything has followed. And I'd like to suggest, I just come off the plane now from DC, where I was attending 2 meetings, the main of which were the report back by the various missions, the Global Center for Global Governance, IRI, NDI. I was quite amazed at the intense interest of the US in Zimbabwe, which is not matched by a kind of explicit foreign policy position. So I'm still interrogating that. But the conclusions they've made so far point to the fact that elections are likely to be deemed not free, fair, nor credible by those who govern our world. We've allowed the international community to become the referees for the last 20 years, and regrettably, they are the ones who decide whether these elections are free, fair. Yes, they did in 2002. They indicate already, first of all, most of which confirms what we all know is the dubious independence of ZEC. Regrettably, ZEC has become more and more an arm of government. Secondly, the failure to audit the voters' roll. We have a situation where the nomination court met yesterday without a voters' roll. And the voters' roll has not been made available to parties. Thirdly, there is question of the secrecy of the vote, that there has been widespread abuse of the registration slips in rural areas in particular. I won't mention the diaspora vote, where you have 3.5 to 4 million Zimbabweans outside and not allowed to vote. It's a big anomaly. We'll leave that to the side for a while. Fourthly, the militarization of the electoral system. This is not a thing to dispute. It's been evident since 2000. The military run the elections. And right now, one of the coup leaders is the conventional officer, Zengeya, to engage in charge of elections. It's not a secret that elections have been run from KG6 barracks in the past. We were in the media, so we know. Media, up to the time I left home last Monday, ZBC was still pumping out its propaganda like never before. Almost disdainful that there is another side of the story to the Zimbabwean narrative. Then, of course, the touchy issue of the printing and storage of ballot papers. Still unresolved. These are some of the glaring things up to this day. On the basis of that, I don't see that the elections are likely to be deemed free, fair. But before I go into what I think should be the solution, although that's implied in Lloyd's discussion later, the fact that soon after the coup, the expectation by both the region and those who were implicitly behind the coup out here in Britain and the US was that there would have been a transitional government. In fact, it's no secret. The transitional government would have been on the 22nd of November. It was Zuma and Lorenko, the new leader of Angola, was supposed to fly to Harare following a meeting of the Troika on defense, which met in Rwanda on the 21st. They were coming to Harare to help inaugurate the transition government, which would have been partly to cure the coup. And that Emerson Mnangagwa would have been the president, and Mr. Dabengwa and Joyce were to be the vice president. And Morgan Tsvangirai was to be the prime minister. This explains why Joyce Morgan rushed from his hospital back to the inauguration. There was an expectation. There's still a debate as to why that was shelved. I suspect it was the military. It was clearly to mean that Zengeya would have been vice president under such structure. Needless to add that even the British were very concerned at the turnout, at that outcome, where the military were very prominent, very visible. So I'll leave that to Ray to look at. But let me just go to the second point which I want to make, which we seem to have forgotten, especially as scholars, the historical backdrop, which has meant that we have this messy situation in our country. First of all, the liberation movement, of which many of us were part, lost the mass base mid-90s. Remember in 96 when Zimbabwe was not able to fill up the stadiums. So you have a diminishing fortunes of the ruling party since 96. Needless to add, since 2000, the electoral process has been dominated by the military directly. And it's an understatement to say the elections, almost every election, has been rigged since 2000. The most blatant of course was 2013, where Mugabe, who had been so unpopular, gets 2.2 million votes, 1 million votes more than he had in the previous election. Let's not debate rigging. Rigging has become institutionalized in Zimbabwe, as it is in many other countries and elsewhere. And that we were able to interview some of the riggers in 2008. In fact, we published 12 names of key persons who were involved in that exercise. Not to mention the legendary Nico, which has an office in Harare and at KG6. So, thirdly, in the context of the historical backdrop, the coup itself represents a very advanced stage in the disintegration of the state-party conflation in Zimbabwe. Those who are historians, political economists, will reflect on this and will say that contrary to the claim by the propagandists in ZANU-PF, in the military, that this was restore legacy. On the contrary, in my view, it is actually the disintegration of the Party of Liberation. And not surprising. We all say that when Mugabe goes, he goes and it's gone. What you have is a remnant of it, which is the form of the state, and just. And the state itself is shattered, is split, is divided. And when people talk about the relative freedom of movement and the extent to which the opposition parties have been able to campaign in the rural areas, it's not benevolence on the part of the state. Not at all. It is the state has simply shattered. You have a whole the intelligence system completely disrupted. So we have a backdrop of a disintegrating state, which might be good in terms of what we should expect. I would just end by saying that I'd hope that the post-election would witness another journey, but a journey in which three things are emphasized. The first is return to constitutionalism, in which we would have the separation of powers again and the military back to the barracks, which was the case in 1980. I was in the Defense Forces Commission myself for 6 years. You never heard the military talk politics at all. There was clearly and adherence to constitutional provisions, which are there. Secondly, we would hope to have, in addition to political reform, also public service reform. One of the things we did in 1980, I don't see anyone here was there in 1980. we gave, I'm talking in the States.
Okay.
One of the things we gave a lot of attention to skills, not only training, but also skill allocation in the bureaucracy. Now, when we have a situation where we have 68 to 70% of Zimbabwean professionals outside the country, that is also in the bureaucracy. People talk about ministers and so on and so forth. The point is the bureaucracy, you cannot deliver. It's poorly made. There are people there who in my time will not be members of public service at all. So we have a dilapidated bureaucracy. And we have to look at the reform of that. Thirdly, of course, we have to talk about economic reform, which I think we'll talk about later. I'll stop there for the beginning. And that must include necessarily the need to attract the 68%, at least a large proportion of them, back to Zimbabwe. Without whom I can't see us recovering economically. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll move on to Mr. Lloyd Msibaka.
Thank you, Chair. Doctor touched on some of my list there, so that I'll forgive you this time. One thing I do agree with you, though, is this issue of postponing elections. Round about the time, power transfer, that's another thing we differ. I call it a power transfer, he calls it a coup. But right about the time of the power transfer, I wrote something which actually sent to the authorities that what is happening now is an opportunity for Zimbabwe to find itself and hopefully postpone the election and follow the Ghanaian model, where we saw Jerry Rawlings taking power in 1979 and then took a very good 10 years commandeering the economy, making sure that all the red button issues in the country are sorted out. But alas, it did not happen. And some of the reasons that were cited were the issue of the Constitution and the issue of legitimacy. In my books, the Constitution is a people's document, and it can be changed to reflect the aspirations of its people. So for me, that was not an excuse. Events in November last year united everybody. You know, it changed the political culture in Zimbabwe. It's something that has never happened before. It was an opportunity to deal with the fundamentals, you know, the cash crisis, deal with the corruption, the quality of the contestation when you have elections later. And when I saw President Mnangagwa and Chiwenga going to see Morgan Tsvangirai, I honestly thought it was going to happen. We were going to have some kind of inclusive government. And as time went on, I realized it was, going away. And before you know it, the issue of elections started taking center stage. And I was really shattered because where we're going now and what is most likely to happen if we go ahead with these elections may not bring out the legitimacy that we seek as Zimbabweans. It might actually send the country into some kind of political shock. Because as of November last year, Zimbabwe entered a transitional period in terms of where we're going. And bringing in elections abruptly will send the country into political shock. That is my sentiment. See, some people cite the issue of investors and say investors want elections to take place. I disagree. Most of the investors I've spoken to say, look, we're not worried about your elections. We're more worried about the security of our money, the land tenure. There are things that you can put in place without necessarily having an election, and Zimbabwe will become, a model democracy. So I'm I'm a bit thrown back with where we were now. I don't know whether we still have time to probably postpone the election within the next 45 days. I don't know whether that will happen, Doctor. So we're hustling towards probably implosion, so I'll put it, as Zimbabwe. Will we have the legitimacy that we seek after this election? I don't know whether Chamisa or Amnanga, but the issue is, will we have the legitimacy that we seek? Will we have the work in Zimbabwe, or maybe we'll be worse off than where we are now? That's where the case for postponing the election comes in. One would have thought we would deal with the red button issues, the corruption, the issue of the diaspora, as Dr. was saying there, that the diaspora need to come back on board and help propel the country forward. The cash crisis, the issues that make a country function. We were 23 presidential candidates. That's unprecedented in Zimbabwe. I mean, so that speaks to the quality of the contestation that we're going to have on the 30th of July. There is no way you're going to have 23 presidential candidates and expect an outcome that will speak to the citizen and say this is free and fair. So all those things means that we went about it the wrong way. See, I'm one person who is so much for what happened last year up to today. But with regards to the elections, I took a different route. We should have postponed our elections, fixed our country, and then have a contestation later on. Jerry Rawlings did it. Ghana was in a big mess in 1979. He took over. They went for 10 years, brought in multi-party democracy, brought the diaspora back in, and in 1982 they had an election, a proper contestation. It's the quality of the contestation, because elections does not necessarily translate to democracy or legitimacy. It might actually set us backwards. And what is sad is that we enjoyed a lot of goodwill after the power transfer last year. A lot of goodwill. Everybody was prepared to work with us. And as Doctor said, even the regional bodies were actually expecting that all the players will come together and have some sort of inclusive government, and then we move forward. So where we are now, we actually hustling towards our own, destruction. That's the way I look at it. Call it pessimistic, but I'm not really buying into the legitimacy narrative at the moment. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That allows me to extend your time in responding to.
Well, thanks very much. Thank you. Let me try and do 2 or 3 things. One is the impossible task, to try and put a squeeze on, I think, on some remarks, introductory remarks that people have made, and see if we can, like a jazz piece, see where it takes us to. And I will try and do 3 things as I go.